The architecture of the shadow. Why men sabotage their own power. Most men spend their lives fighting an unseen enemy. You've felt it. That sudden, irrational burst of anger that ruins a high-stakes negotiation. That people-pleasing habit that kills your authority with your team. Or that nagging, hollow sense that despite your professional success, you're just wearing a high-priced mask. You aren't broken, and you aren't alone. You are bent. This is a deep dive into a breakdown of human nature that most people are too afraid to acknowledge. Using the frameworks of master strategist Robert Greene and behavior expert Chase Hughes, we're looking at the dark side of the human psyche, not as a flaw to be cured, but as a source of power to be reclaimed. If you are between 25 and 45, you are in the prime years of your legacy. But if you don't understand the shadow you carry, you will continue to be a passenger in your own life. Let's start with the hard data. Is anyone actually born evil? Robert Greene points to the work of psychoanalyst Melanie Klein, who studied infants and identified what she called greedy babies. These are infants who interact with the world with an almost violent level of want. They aren't taught to be aggressive. They are born with a genetic predisposition to take, to push, and to dominate. Research in behavioral genetics supports this. Meta-analyses of twin studies show that approximately 50% of the variance in dark personality traits, like psychopathy and narcissism, is heritable. FBI profiler Jim Clemente calls this the loaded gun. Genetics provide the ammunition. Your biology sets the stage. But genetics alone don't pull the trigger. That happens later. There is even data suggesting winter-born babies may face unique genetic disadvantages. Environmental stressors on the mother during pregnancy, like seasonal illness or malnutrition, can cause certain dark genetic markers to express themselves. This isn't a death sentence, but it is a biological reality. For some, the dark side isn't a choice. It's the hardware they were shipped with. For the other 98% of us, the dark side is built through a process Chase Hughes calls survival bending. Imagine a palm tree growing between two massive concrete buildings. To reach the sunlight, that tree has to bend. It grows crooked, not because it wants to, but because it has to in order to survive. By the time you were 8 or 9 years old, you became a master architect of your own survival. You subconsciously asked yourself 3 questions. What do I have to do to earn friends? What do I have to do to get rewards and recognition? And most importantly, what do I have to do to feel safe? If you grew up in a volatile home, maybe you learned that being invisible was the only way to stay safe. Today, as a 35-year-old executive, you wonder why you choke when it's time to present your best ideas to the board. You aren't lazy. You're still using the survival tactic of an 8-year-old. If you learned that aggression was the only way to get milk, you're likely the guy who blows up at his spouse or his employees over minor inconveniences. You're still bending toward the light of a childhood that ended decades ago. As we grow, society tells us to cut off that bent side. Your parents told you to be a nice boy. Your teachers told you to fall in line. Robert Greene compares this to a round ball that represents your complete self. To fit into society, you have to cut that ball in half. You show the world the bright, shiny side, the saint, the provider, the professional. But the other half, the aggressive impulses, the envy, the raw ambition, that goes into the shadow. It's like the dark side of the moon. It's still there, and it contains massive amounts of energy. Because you've been taught to be ashamed of it, you repress it. But repression is a massive energy leak. It takes an incredible amount of internal bandwidth to keep that mask on 24/7. This is why so many men in their 30s and 40s feel exhausted despite not doing physical labor. You aren't tired from work. You're tired from the performance. And because you aren't aware of your shadow, it eventually leaks out in explosions. Angry emails, self-destructive habits, or sudden bursts of cruelty that leave you wondering where that came from. Greene's warning is clear. That is you. And until you own it, It owns you. The solution isn't to become a better person in the traditional sense. It's about integration. The most successful men in history, the ones who actually move the needle, don't try to kill their shadow. They channel it. Think about your ambition. Think about that dark desire to win and to beat the competition. If you repress that because you want to seem humble, you'll become passive-aggressive and bitter. But if you acknowledge it, you can channel that aggression into your career. You can use that dark energy to fuel a 14-hour workday or to lead a team through a crisis. Real authority comes from being authentic. Chase Hughes points out that everyone you meet who looks like they have their shit together is likely lonely and faking it. We are in a loneliness epidemic because men are terrified to show their flaws. But when you achieve what Hughes calls ridiculous levels of self-forgiveness, you stop vibrating with shame. You stop sending out threat signals to others. When you own your shadow, you no longer need the mask. That is when you become truly dangerous to your competition and truly safe for your family. Finally, let's look at the ultimate metric. Ancient texts, from the Torah to the Bhagavad Gita, share a singular obsession. In the King James Bible alone, the phrase "do not fear" appears 365 times. One for every single day of the year. Why? Because human behavior is governed by only two primary emotions: love and fear. Fear is the root of the survival bend. Fear is why you wear the mask. Fear is why you repress your shadow. Having a good life isn't about being a saint. It's about getting out of the fear area and into the love area. Loving the challenge, loving the process, and being open-hearted enough to be authentic. To win the second half of your life, you must do three things. First, identify your survival bend. What did your 8-year-old self do to survive? Second, stop repressing your shadow. Acknowledge your dark impulses and give them a job. Channel that fire into your work, your fitness, or your mission. Third, drop the mask. The world doesn't need more nice guys faking their way through life. It needs integrated men who have faced their darkness and chosen to lead anyway. The mask is heavy. You've been wearing it for 30 years. It's time to take it off. Own your shadow. Channel your fire. Stay sharp.